Hey gang, it's KR King of D&D Homebrew, and today I'm going to give you the ultimate secret of running Theater of the Mind battles and encounters. And, I have said on my videos many times, I'm an advocate of using battle maps and encounters, and I like it online when I have a VTT system that has a battle map system with line of sight and whatnot. And, in the old days, we would draw our maps out, and I still think that's a great way to do it. It has the surprise and suspense of exploration. And I do this 95% of the time. But occasionally, I will use Theater of the Mind. Sometimes if I'm online and I'm running a one-shot, and I'm not using a VTT program, I just am going over Zoom or something. And sometimes if you just get together and you don't have your books or minis or anything, but you've got a phone, you can access the rules, and we quickly come up with some characters. I'm just gonna do that Theater of the Mind there. And then there have been times when I'm coming from a work situation, I'm going to my in-person game, and I don't have my box. I have a box with the battle map on it and the minis inside. I don't have that. I usually have my work computer. In theory, you can do it by phone, but usually I have my work computer. I can still run, and I can still use maps in that Theater of the Mind situation, because that is the secret. No matter what the encounter, if you as the GM have a map that you can look at as you're describing the situation, Theater of the Mind, whatever it is, and you're keeping track of things, it really makes it more satisfying for the players. So some of you say, well, I run Theater of the Mind and I use like dungeon maps. How can I run a dungeon without some map telling me where I'm going to go? Okay, that's fine. Although I have some tweaks on how to make that more efficient. But I'm saying that map should have a grid, 5 or 10 foot squares on it, and some means for you to mark on it or somehow keep track of what is happening with the players' NPCs in relation to one another, and what are the architectural features, what are the items in there. Because I think in any battle situation, if you're in Theater of the Mind and the GM doesn't have an accurate map, or these distances are there, they're not keeping track of where the players are vis-a-vis the NPCs or monsters, and you get very frustrated. We all get into a large room and we start interacting with things or having an encounter, and things start to get muddled. The GM has no idea where we were in relation to these things, and so suddenly people are saying, well, I was over here looking at this, or I was exploring, or whatever, and players aren't able to use more sophisticated tactical maneuvers in combat because they don't have a real sense of where things are. Are there pillars or statues or pits in the floor or something like that we can use for cover or a tactical advantage. You better be really good at describing them, and we're supposed to be memorizing those. If you're running a system where there are rules on how far everything can move in feet, the range of spells and missile fire, you're going to want to know, well, how far do I have to go to engage something or get around behind it? If you have a role-playing encounter, let's say in a tavern, and the players are entering this tavern, do they all stay together just as a group, or do they kind of wander around and do things? And the players go up and start talking to someone who can overhear this in your group. How far away are they? Can they see what's going on? Are you going to go into some area where they can't see? When you have a map as the GM, you can keep track of that. And of course, if a battle starts in those role-playing encounters, you want to know where everyone is. And I would say, even if you're playing a system that uses more ranges, right? You have close quarter, short range, medium, long, that kind of thing. There's still a sense of what is that usually, how far humanoids can go. 30 foot, some people say 30 foot, the pizza kind of thing or whatever you call it. 30, 30, 30. Okay. So if I have a map that shows me those distances with a grid, even though I don't use it, I have a sense of where those ranges are. So let's use a classic situation where almost all GMs, as far as I know, use a map, a dungeon, even if they're using Theater of the Mind. You want to have that map. I like to put a plastic cover on that map. I print it off, and then I could take that map and I can draw on it with grease pencils, different colored grease pencils, or different colored, non-permanent markers, so that I can keep track of where they are in the dungeon, and how many turns are going by, whether they're rounds or turns. Again, in a system where you keep track of that, how much time has gone by. Like the classic torch thing. If you are the type that wants to keep track of torches, well, how long are they exploring, right? The thing where, well, we'll just do an hour of real time or whatever. I know that people like that or whatever. It's a new thing. But to me, you can just keep track of time. Just tell them where they are. And I'm writing this down. I'm putting it on with my grease pencil or my marker. And since I am almost always using my computer, maybe in a pinch I would use my phone, keeping track of it there. But if I got my computer, then I got my maps on there, my digital maps. I like to use, drawing software to make maps. although you don't have to. You can take those and you can use a package like, I'll use Photoshop, but you can use a free package GIMP or Draw or something like that, and just mark where the players are as they're going along. And here's another thing. If you're running online and you're not in a VTT setting with line of sight capabilities and all that stuff, you're just on a Zoom call and you're in a dungeon or you're in some structure, I would not show the players the map. I like that sense of danger and suspense and mystery. You're going through some dungeon or you're going through some building, and I'm describing it to them, but I'm keeping track of it at my desk or whatever, while I'm running online. I've been in places where the GM showed us the whole structure or the dungeon, like big parts of it. And I'm sort of like, well, why is that? Well, because they just put it digitally in a picture, and they didn't want to cover it up you have various pictures. Well, okay, but I don't need to see that. Just tell me what I'm going through, and you're keeping track. And another nice thing about that, you download that dungeon from the internet, and then you can size it such that you could print that off in an 8x11 sheet, again, that you can put in a protective plastic cover using the grease pencil or non-permanent marker thing. It might be really small. The players, wouldn't use this. It would be too small because you can get a big map in a small area, but you're keeping track and you're describing this to them. And the things on a map that you get from the internet may have stuff that you hadn't thought about. Cool features, pits or different elevations in a dungeon, water areas, all sorts of stuff that you can then elaborate on. The sound of rushing water in another room, and they go in there and there it is. There's a stream flowing in there. And it if they just see it, on a map that you give them or show, on a Zoom call or something, it loses that impact. So here's another one. If you're using random encounters, I like random encounters, and the players they're going through a swamp, let's say, and they're going to have a random encounter. If I've got my computer there, and again, I'm doing this theater of the mind, and this might be a situation where I don't feel like drawing it on a battle map or anything, I'm using minis. Probably not, but let's just say I decide to. I can look on the internet and find all sorts of really cool swamp maps and download them and use them. Again, another great way to do this is to do it all in advance, have all the different terrain types, download those, print them, and when you have a random monster encounter, you just pull one of those out. And I found this one here that has this walkway that runs across this swampy area. There's areas where there's water that goes right up to the walkway. There's areas where the plant life comes right here. And so depending on the random monster that you're running, you could have a shambling mound that, can't be recognized. It looks just like a plant, and it just lurks there by this walkway waiting for people to come by to snatch them. And you just ask the players, what's your marching order? You're keeping track of it. You're marking it down. And then when it occurs, the shambling mound waits to this person. You know where they are. And then they start the thing, theater of the mind, and you're just describing their, I'm going to go this far down or that far in the map. You're keeping track of this, telling them what's happening, but they don't need to be. They just need to be visualizing this theater of the mind. And you have those hand wave encounters where either the players are just going to easily win or they're going to run away. It still can be useful to have a map to think about if the creatures run away, in what directions do they run? What's the terrain types like? What's going on? Can the players catch them? Or let's say they go to a village they want to investigate, and whether or not you've got something already made for this village, but for whatever reason you're going to do this theater of the mind, it's a role play situation. You can see the village. I've got maps of villages with all sorts of stuff. Some of them, marked with information for me that I don't necessarily want to have the players see, so I'll just describe it to them. I don't want to sit there and draw this out elaborately on a battle map, so I'll just tell them the town square is here, there's these buildings, and then they go into various ones. There's clearly a tavern. They go into the tavern. And then I'll have a tavern map that I have, and if you look at, I'm going to just search on the internet for a tavern. I found some examples. Look at the size of this one, the distances across here. So if the players are going to go in here and start talking to people, and you've positioned people in here, you're marking this down or keeping track. Again, I like to use the protective plastic cover, but you can just print this off and use pencils or pen, whatever you want, and just keep track of where the players are, because do they all stay together as a group or do they move around? And you have areas like back in here, this table here, where the line of sight is obscured. Players can't see what's going on in there. So you can do this for all sorts of encounters and role-playing things that go to the keep. You just have a map of this keep, or you have a map of the hall where they're going to meet with the king. You're not expecting it to necessarily, devolve into some battle situation, but who goes up to the king? Who's staying back? What are other people? Is there some vizier there and he's right next to the king? Do the players try to, let's go over to this area or that? Are they going to be throwing spells to try to, spy or do something? And do they want to be seen? Can they get behind a pillar to do that? When you've got a map and you're looking at it as you're describing this, really, really useful. And a lot of times things will evolve. I've talked about improvising my 1 minute village video where you don't have that much time. So it's great to have these things printed off and you're just looking at them. Or just search if you use your computer while you're running. Search, pick up a map, and use that map as you're describing a theater of the mind situation to the players. Because here's the thing, it's clear to the players that you know exactly where they are. When they say, okay, I moved over here, and you say, okay, you're 60 feet away, and you're behind this pillar, and they're over here, and I'm looking at a map, I've got a map, but you don't need to worry about it, we're just doing this theater of the mind. But they're confident that when they move another 60 feet and you're keeping track, it's all accurate. And you don't have that sense that suddenly distances have gone from here to here. Wait a minute, I wasn't standing next to that person when there's an area spell or a 15-foot cone or all this kind of stuff that I've seen. And I've sort of argued and then said, you know what, it's not worth it. We're doing this theater of the mind. I'm just going to move on. But, it's not necessary. Because if you've got a sense of where this is, you're looking at this map, the players will get that. And that will make your battles and social encounters more fun. And that, my friends, is why we're playing the game. So if that's helpful to you, please subscribe to my channel. I'm always looking for more. I'd love to hear from you guys. Do you run Theater of the Mind all the time? Sometimes never. If you do you use a map? Do you ever just wing it with everything in your head? But most importantly, keep playing an RPG game, whichever one you choose, and tell somebody else about it.